Welcome back to episode 41 of Blurred Summits. Today we have Danial Jamal with us. Danial is a university student at the University of Calgary. He has come from New Brunswick, now living in the big city of Calgary, Alberta.
That's right. Yeah, thanks for having me.
We're going to be talking to Danial today about a bunch of different topics ranging from mental health to the way that the universe works. Okay,
sure.
Nice to have you, Danial.
Yeah, some pretty cool topics here to talk about today.
Thank you. Yeah, go ahead.
So, starting off, you come from a small town in Canada, right? And you move to the big city. And you often talk about them being two different phases of your life, right? There's the small town phase, there's a big town phase. So
Sure.
What does that kind of mean to you? What is the big town? What's the small town? And what's that differentiation that you really see between the two?
Well, Freddie in New Brunswick, that was 40, 50, maybe at most 60,000 people when I was there. And to me, that was huge, right? To me, that was big. Mm-hmm. And then you come over here, and they're like, we haven't heard of that place before. Like, what is that place, right? Yeah. I even remember in English class, the only time that New Brunswick was brought up was in a fiction story, which there was just so people didn't even believe it then, right? And you move to Calgary, to a big city, and you feel this need to fit in. It's a very unhealthy habit I found, a very unhealthy mindset that I had myself, which was to sort of manipulate my own psychology and personality to match it up with Calgary, right? Mm-hmm. But the Calgary atmosphere is not asking me to do any of that, right? It's just telling me to be myself. But for me, it wasn't about being myself. It was about, well, what can I do to impress Calgarians? What can I do to impress
Like it's the big
atmosphere?
city, the fancy place.
Exactly, dude. Like it was every time I talked to someone, it was as if I was doing a cold call for a meeting, right? I was trying to grab clients here and there, but everyone's like, no, just be yourself, man. We want to hear about Freddie. Actually, tell us about Freddie. And it's like, no, let me tell you about my plans for the future. Let me tell you about what I'm going to do in Calgary, right?
Yeah.
But it's none of that. So whatever plan I had coming out of that small town to make it big, whatever that meant, never works, right? Never works. And so eventually I realized that I have to sort of step out of that picture frame of living big and busy. And living big and busy really was that. It was trying to be successful, which is an okay goal, but trying to be successful like very quickly. And not only quickly, but in a way that you might actually find that you don't like, right? I mean, you said this before. The things you want aren't always the things you truly want, right? And so back then, I wanted to be this high school success.
So what was the tipping point for you? Where you were like, maybe living big and busy is not the way that I want to continue.
The tipping point for me was, it really was my environment changing in itself. So surrounding myself with people who helped me realize that it's not all that, right? There's so much more to Calgary, to living big and busy, than pretending you're living in the financial district of Manhattan, walking down the street, trying to make big calls, right? There's so much more to it than that. Yeah. And that the only way you can be successful in your own terms is to literally be yourself. There's nothing more to it. Nothing more, nothing less.
So would you say it's surrounding yourself with people who kind of like to keep it real as opposed to that facade?
Exactly. They keep it real. And it was interesting because these people that I decided to surround myself with more, they never gave me any sort of explicit advice. They never said, okay, Daniel, this is your problem. Let's fix it.
Yeah.
No. They did what I needed to do, which was they were being themselves. And I looked at that and I was like, hold on, I'm not doing that. Let me try that out for a second, right? And it worked, and it's been working for the past 2-3 years now, and it's just it really helps out for sure. It helps you step outside of what I call the constant metallic robot version of yourself. When you're in high school, when you're a teenager, especially when you're changing environments, you feel this need to be inside of this robot saying, well, what does this button do if I push it?
Yeah.
What does that button do, right? It's like jumping between aesthetics, jumping between personalities. It's terrible. But then eventually you step outside of that bigger metallic robot version of yourself and you realize that, well, I'm just a guy, right? And the people that kind of pulled me out of that robot were these people in Calgary who I considered very positive people, right? So it was the environment that changed me, That's what I found.
Oh, cool. Well, it seems like that putting on that facade is a lot of work, right? Like it's just mentally draining having to do that thing, always feeling like you're trying to present yourself to these people.
Yeah, it's an interesting way to burn yourself out.
Yeah.
It's a very interesting way.
It takes a lot of fuel to pump that Metallica away.
Yeah.
Totally.
All that oil.
Yeah.
Gas guzzling machine. Yeah.
Exactly.
So this next thing here is, what do you think is a skill that most people neglect when they're developing, but is very important to live a meaningful life?
Sure, that's a great question. I would have to say listening. Definitely listening. I mean, that's the reason why I changed, right?
Yeah.
It was because I used my 2 ears and 1 mouth in that ratio, right? I found that when the trick is to walk into every single conversation with someone, whether you know them or you don't, with this assumption that they know something you don't, that they have something to teach you, right? Mm-hmm. Forget about their credentials. Forget about whether they or not they have a PhD or a bad. Like, everyone has something to teach you, and it's correct 100% of the time. Mm-hmm. You learn so much when you choose to shut your mouth and listen, right?
Yeah.
So that is definitely a skill that helped me out, and that will help out a lot of people out there for sure.
Yeah, I feel like in life, like so many people just want to tell them about yourself, or tell them who they really are, right? Like all they like to do is talk about who they are, and kind of forget the part of listening about what someone else is willing to say.
Right.
And it's like what you said. People have all this cool information that you'll never know, never learn unless you listen to them, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And if you're trying to push this narrative, you're never going to catch on to these things that someone else is saying, right?
Yeah. It's like it goes back to that Einstein's theory of relativity, right? So you have the box, and the thing, every time you put something into the box, the perimeter of the box gets bigger and bigger and bigger. But yet when we walk into conversations, we're like, no, this is my box. It can't get any bigger than this. I know everything, right? Well, that's not true. It can get bigger. And the only way it will get bigger is if you listen, right?
Yeah.
If you listen.
It's a great way of building rapport as well. You know, Huddy is right, saying like people love talking about themselves. So if you listen and let a person talk about themselves, not only are you going to be learning a ton, you're going to become best buds with that person, right?
Yeah.
The person's going to want to be around you because they like talking about things that interest them. So if you can take an interest in those things, then you kind of get the best of both worlds.
That's a great point. Yeah, people will love to be around you. Yeah, it will make you a likable person because, well, what does everyone want, right? Mm-hmm. Like, what's the root cause, the root desire for nearly all human beings, if not, like all human beings out there? It's to be understood.
Yeah.
It's to be valued. Mm-hmm. It's to be heard. And it's covered in this facade sometimes of, I need to be in a relationship right now, right? Mm-hmm. I need to hang out with this guy or that guy. I need to have this job or that job. It's like, no, you don't need any of that. You just need to be understood, valued, and heard. And that comes from surrounding yourself with people who make you feel that way, right? So that's what I found.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Mm-hmm. So, you introduced me to the idea of Newton's third law, right? And we all know about Newton's third law from like physics class. Yeah. And like his 3 laws, whatever. So what is Newton's third law for the people who don't know what it is? And how is your sort of interpretation with it, or more the philosophical aspect rather than the sciencey? Sure,
yeah. I mean, the sciencey, I had a 68 in physics grade 11, so there's a reason why I went the philosophical route with it, Newton's third law. Wow. So it's, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's every action has an opposite and equal reaction.
Yeah, that sounds right.
And obviously, I wasn't able to apply that to vectors or any sort of question that had numbers in it. So I applied it to something else. I realized that, well, here are some prime examples of Newton's third law, right? It's like when a rocket is launching, it lets out fuel. Mm-hmm. When a car is going, it lets out fuel as well. Mm-hmm. When a swimmer is at a swim meet and they're racing, they don't just go. No, they have their foot against the wall and they push this way to go that way, to go forward. They push back. Yeah. And so what's it telling us? Well, it's telling us in a very holistic sense that the only way to go forward is to let something go, right? That might be a relationship. That might be a friendship. That might be a job you thought you really want to have, but you realize you weren't passionate about anymore. Mm-hmm. In lots of, in our friend groups, we are slowly realizing that it's sometimes a program in university that you apply to that you think would just send you over, right? Let me do neurosciences, right? That's going to make me a doctor, make me 6 figures. Yeah. And then you realize in second and third year, man, I want to be in I want to be in the arts. This is what I'm passionate about, man, right? So that's what Newton's third law is telling us. It's kind of like, it's like taking a hike up a mountain, right? So you're on this hike and you have 2 things with you. You have a backpack and you have a Polaroid camera. And every step of the hike, you take a snapshot, shake it and put in your backpack. Take a snapshot, shake it and put in your backpack. Now, is the view better from the bottom or from the top?
From
The top.
From the top, right? And so you reach the top and you take a snapshot. You see where this is going. And you shake it and you're wondering, well, I don't have any space in my backpack anymore. What do I do, right? Well, you have to confront the reality of things, which is that the only way to make space for beautiful things that have value and meaning in life is to get rid of the old ones. So dig in that backpack, open it up, remove all the old ones, toss them out in the garbage. This is a hike. We have to say environmentally friendly. In the garbage or in the recycling, whatever it might be. And now you have space for nicer ones, right? That's what Newton's third law is telling us.
But so often we toss out the picture that we took at the top because we hold on to those old pictures so deeply.
There you go. Yeah.
Well, it's like the people who like hoard onto things. It's like a perfect example for that, right? Like they hold sentimental value to things that actually don't really have any real sentimental value. It's just because I've had it for some time, I want to hold on to it, right?
Yeah, that's why you have to tread very lightly.
Like you actually just have to really be introspective with that stuff and be like, okay, what is it that I actually want? Am I going to use this thing down the line? Yeah. Do I actually need this thing? And if the answer is no, then you can, with the camera example, pull it up, just drop it out of the backpack.
There you go. Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. It's a very tricky thing to kind of come to terms with, right?
They use it in therapy a lot as well. They tell people, like, let's say somebody's trying to make a real big change in their life. They tell them, go in your closet, and you know how 70% of your closet is a bunch of clothes that you never wear.
Yeah, that's accurate. That is accurate for me right now.
Yeah.
Right? Toss out those old... Don't say, one day I'm going to wear it, one day this, one day
I
that.
might wear it again.
Take it and toss it in the Goodwill, give it to a donation center, or throw it in the garbage if you have to. Right. Because you will never be able to move forward, whether it be in your style and changing yourself and whatever, if you keep clinging on to the pieces of your past.
There you go.
Even as much as like clothing, which is just such a physical, tiny object, right?
Well, watch out with this thing. Summer outfit change coming. Take Abdul's advice. Here we go.
Summer's gonna be a movie.
I am gonna be broke come September, but oh well.
Yeah, it's like every single year for the past, we've been in the education system for like 12, 13,
our whole life,
14
basically.
Yeah, pretty much. And what do we do at the end of each semester? You walk downstairs and you open the garbage can and you're tossing out your binder and papers, and your mom's like, no, you're gonna need that next year. Yeah. You're gonna need that next year. Put it back in your bookshelf, right? Yeah. It's like your bookshelf is filled with, and here's the thing: we never use that stuff. Never. We never use that old workbook.
I think I've used one class in my whole university career that it's because it's basically the same stuff over again. So I've been looking at that, but anything else, I agree. It's like you're never going to use it. You hold on to it, be like, oh, I might need this textbook maybe down the line. Something might be interesting in it. Never.
And you throw it out, eventually.
It's like the exact same thing with the hoarding stuff, right?
Yeah. Your bookshelf is filled with all of these old things. And in our example, it's these things you are emotionally attached to that you don't have room for anything new. Mm-hmm. I have a workbook from grade 5 on my bookshelf. What about like university second year calc? Mm-hmm. I need space for that. That's more important because that's coming in the future, right? Yeah. The outcome of that is still to be determined. The outcome of that grade 5 textbook is it's done.
And you know all the stuff in it too, right? Like like you've learned it before. Yeah. It's in the past, I guess is what I was trying to get at there. So, do you believe that there are common human experiences?
Yeah, totally. We're all very special and unique in our own way, right? But something that really, that's a retrospective point of view, right? And then when you become objective, when you step outside the box of your own experiences, and this is my problem, no one else understands me, no one else gets it, right? Mm-hmm. You realize that everyone's been through the same thing. Mm. And if not it being the same thing, there is so much overlap that from a distance, it's like, yeah, that's the same
They
thing.
look one and the same.
Right? Like I have this example I always give. It's about taking snapshots, right? Let's go back to the Polaroid camera for, I don't know what it is with me and Polaroid
You love
camera.
Polaroids.
And
The
what can I
aesthetic.
say? And so let's say there was a research coordinator and he grabbed everyone on earth. Screw it. Everyone on earth. And he said that I want you guys to take a snapshot for the next 30 days of every second you are living. Every second you live, just take a snapshot, right? Mm-hmm. And they do that for 30 days. And they meet after 30 days in this little auditorium. And he tells them, okay, here's a cork board, a huge cork board. Now just pin them. Pin them, make a huge collage of everyone's snapshots, right? And he says, come back tomorrow. And they come back tomorrow. And they're like, okay, well, what's he doing with this corkboard full of all of our snapshots? And they come back tomorrow. And he says, okay, now go back and pick out the ones that are yours. And what you'll find is that everyone will be picking out someone else's.
Okay.
Because everything looks the same. Our lives are so incredibly similar in that sense, right? So if you have a problem, big or small, someone else has been through it. At least 1 million or 2 million people have been through it, right? And where does the anxiety and stress behind problems come from? Like, where does it really breed from? It breeds from this sense of isolation, that when anxiety and stress comes to town, it only knocks on my door, and it knocks on no one else's door. It's like, no, it's Santa Claus, man. It knocks on every child's door. Take it easy, you know?
It's going down everyone's chimney. That's it. Consent, no consent, it's just going down.
Yeah, exactly. So the human experience, the human condition, if you want to call it, it's so similar. It's so unidirectional across all different types, all demographics, all types of people, right? And it's something that is not always advisable, right? Like I wouldn't recommend going up to a person who has some serious problems and being like, yeah, don't worry about it. Someone else has been through this before, right? Because it kind of sounds condescending, like you're degrading their problem. But here's my theory. Here's my little theory, right? And I have no science to back this up, but it feels right to me. It's that they will eventually realize it themselves, right? I think one of the best prescriptions out there is to realize that you are not the only one going through this, that you're not alone. But you're not going to take that prescription and have it work for you by having someone else tell you that. No, it's going to take some time to chip away at that type of
You need to be your own doctor.
You need to be your own doctor. For this type of prescription, you need to find it yourself, right? And I think everyone's going to eventually find it when they're older, that I'm not the only one who's going through this.
Yeah.
Right.
You think this is why like empathy is so important though, like in society in general, right? Because everyone's going through their own problems, ones that everyone's been through before, right? So like not knowing what people are going through, being empathetic with everyone in society kind of gives people a chance to understand what other people are going through.
Yeah, totally. You mean like just empathizing with people in the sense that it could have happened to you?
Yeah, or like you don't know what they're going through, I guess, or if they are going through something, know that everyone kind of goes through similar things, so it's tough to go through, right?
Yeah, no, I see what you mean, totally. Yeah, empathy is definitely important in that regard, for sure, yeah.
So, as we grow up, we change. That's a pretty fair statement, what do you say? And as we change, as we grow up and we change, like we kind of said, you have to clear out your closet. You got to let go of the past. So when dealing with your past mistakes, like how do you let go of those, right? How do you clear out your metaphorical closet?
Sure, yeah, that's a great question. By realizing that you're not that person anymore, right? It's a tough, there's two places that we live in, right? It's in the past and the future. Like, find me someone who's truly living in the present. That's a tough person to find. That's a
some monk in the mountains.
Even he's living in the future.
Even then he's like, yeah, there's this girl I used to date back. I'm thinking of like hitting her up, you know?
Yeah.
I'm gonna haul her with like a D horn. It's holler at her. Right? Even he has his little problems every now and then.
Yeah.
It's realizing that, yeah, you're not that person anymore. right? And I mean to an extreme extent. It's not this is old Daniel and this is new Daniel. It's this is Danial Jamal right now. And this guy in the past, I don't know him. Like, who is he? I don't know him, right? When you make a major change in your life, it's not someone on the train tracks pulling the lever and changing the train's direction from here to here. No, it's a completely different train. It's a completely different train. And I think you need to it's a nice way of letting go, isn't it? By realizing that you're not that person anymore.
Yeah. Like that person is dead.
Yeah.
Right? You know, like they've been buried. They no longer exist on this earth.
Well, thinking about it in that way makes it easier to overcome it, right?
It does.
Because when thinking it's this little subtle change, you're not going to be as forthcoming with it. But if you realize, okay, it's this huge jump that happens, bang, gone, that other train's gone, you can't get back on that one, then I think you can be more accepting of what you've gone to, right? Of that change.
Yeah. I think a very unhealthy thing we do is we attribute mistakes that we made in the past to who we are now, right? In psychology, there's this great thing, the FAET, the fundamental attribution error trap, right? It's that every mistake you make, you tell yourself, well, this is a reflection of who I am, what I'm capable of, what I'm going to look like in the future. No, it's not, right? For me, for example, last semester of uni, I did terrible. I did terrible. You know, I would tell my GPA, but it might make the viewers turn the camera off, turn the phone off for a second, right? But I did terrible, and my initial judgment was based on FAET. It was that you did bad, and this is a reflection of who you are. It's like, that's not true, right? I think we have to be very careful when we judge ourselves for being quote unquote lazy or idiots or being dumb, right? It's like, maybe you're not doing the thing that you like. You grab the hardest working person on earth and say he's a scientist, and you tell him, I want you to try out basketball. The basketball manager is going to look at him and be like, this guy's the laziest person in the world.
Yeah.
What is he doing? He's not even trying. Well, he's not doing the thing he's passionate about. He's not doing the thing he loves. Of course he's going to be lazy. Of course he's going to fail, right? And that's what I realized with myself. It's that the mistakes I make aren't a reflection of who I am, but rather it could be a reflection of maybe me having to pull that lever on the tracks and say, let's try out something else, right? Like you figure out what you like to do by doing what you don't like first, right? Here's an example I give. It's that you don't grab a blank canvas and paint out something in 5 minutes and say, yeah, that looks like me. That looks like something I'm going to do. No. You have one of those 10-foot tall blocks of stone that they used to use in the Greek times to make statues and stuff and structures. And you chip away at it for years and years and years until it takes up the shape of something you can look at and go, yeah, that looks like me.
Yeah.
Right? And it takes years to do that.
Yeah, and along the way, while you're chipping at that stone, you know, you might make a mistake here or there, but you work around that mistake.
Right.
The end product is all that really matters. It doesn't matter. You can make a million mistakes throughout.
Yeah.
This is something that is so funny with magic. They always say, like, a magic trick the process doesn't matter. Because the audience doesn't know what you're doing. Like, you could mess up in the middle of a magic trick and then be like, and there's one more step. The audience doesn't know when the end pow is going to happen. So you could mess up 15 times in a magic trick and it seems like one seamless thing.
There you go.
Yeah, who would have thought Abdul the magic guy?
Magic guy. David Blaine.
He was known as a magic guy in one of his Kines classes.
Yeah.
So you're running this kind of this strength and anxiety workshop, right? So if you could just take one tip from that workshop and kind of just give it out for everyone, what would that tip be?
Don't come, probably. It's gonna be terrible. No, I'm not gonna say that. That's a good question. Yeah, I guess realize that there is a difference between the way things seem and the way things actually are. And that, I mean, I would bet $1 million that almost all of our problems, everyone in the world, they are based on the way things seem, not the way things really are. And so you need to be able to step outside of the jukebox of this little fantasy world of yours where it's like it's a reality distortion, man. It really is. The way things seem is distorted reality. And you need to step outside of that bad weather for a second and realize that that's not the reality of things. This is the reality of things. And what's the reality of things? Well, it's that you're going to be all right. You'll be fine, right? There's that research they talk about all the time. It's like 85% of the things you worry about never happen. They never happen.
That's an insane stat. Like, that's so much.
That is... Yeah, and now I'm tracking back because I don't have the resources. I don't have sources on that, but I don't know.
But it's honestly
it's a lot.
more than that. It's probably even more than that, to be honest. You know? Yeah. Like, there's this quote that I really love that says, "I'm not as I think I am. I'm not as you think I am. I am as I think you think I am." Right? So I am how I believe, how
how others perceive you.
You think I am. So it's not even like you could think of me completely different. But if I believe you think of me a certain way, then I begin to put that as who I am, the fundamental truths about my life. Right?
Interesting, yeah.
That is like a mind twister. It's like
Yeah. It's a bit
trying
of
to
a
think
tongue
it all
twister,
together.
right?
Yeah, I'm like, damn.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think like with all that stuff through, like when you're going through tough times, and I think we've talked about this with relationships and stuff before, where it's like getting that outside opinion on a bunch of these things will kind of let you know what's actually going on, right?
Yeah.
Like, because you in a moment of something, you think of things, you view things the way that you kind of want them to be. Like, let's be honest, like
Wishful thinking.
yeah, you think of things the way, at least in when you're trying to draw out relationships and stuff, you think of them as, oh, this will work, it'll get through this thing. But then your like outside peers will always kind of know what's really right for you and what's kind of going on in it. So I think being open to that suggestion and support from your peers is so important to then get that extra opinion, because usually what you're saying is either like over dramatized or completely in the wrong direction, right?
Yeah. Well, and I think, the hardest thing kind of goes back to something Danny said earlier in the interview is listening, right? You need to be able to, when the people around you are telling you the truth of the situation, are you able to actually take it in? Yeah. Or are you going to continue deluding yourself with a false reality?
Yeah. When you delude yourself with that false reality, though, it can get super dangerous, right? Like
Very dangerous.
You can go into this downward spiral, and then you start to feel like everyone who's trying to give you this advice is against you, and then you drop your friends, you drop all these people because you think they're trying to hurt you, and then the relationship or whatever it is ends, and then it's like, oh, wait. They were looking out for my best interest. They were trying to help me.
That cognitive bias slowly becomes a monster, man.
Yeah.
It becomes a monster. That's why I think we have to tread very lightly when it comes to venting, right? We all talk about venting. This is like self-care, and it is self-care, and it is a great way to help your own mental well-being. But you have to be careful with it, especially when you're listening to someone else vent, when you're being their lending ear, because the more they vent, the stronger their cognitive bias becomes, especially if they're venting about a relationship issue or a friendship issue, right? You have to stop them, have them pause before they spiral down this rabbit hole of, it's not my fault, it's their fault.
Yeah.
Like, what if I'm listening to them and I'm like, hold on. This is weird. Like, something's funny here, right? You might have actually made a mistake.
Yeah.
But since I'm being the lending ear, I can't jump in, right? I can't interrupt. I have to let them do their thing.
You keep feeding the beast.
Yeah.
You
let them keep going.
Exactly.
Like, oh, that's so bad to hear. And then they just keep going and going.
Yeah.
It's like, oh boy. Then like once the train gets going, you can't stop the train.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like 100%. A snowball, right?
Yeah.
Going down the hill. If you kind of hold them when the snowball is small, sure.
It's
but
easy.
If it's a 10-foot snowball, you're getting rammed.
Yeah.
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 You're getting plowed over. That's
there you
it.
go.
Yeah.
There you go. So you have to be very careful with that. Don't try to find ways, certain coping mechanisms. And I guess the best one is what you mentioned. Is go talk to a friend you can trust and trust them completely. Trust them 100% when they say, this isn't the way things actually are.
Yeah.
Right?
This is how it appears from an outside perspective.
Yeah.
Especially if you trust that person.
Yeah.
Right? Like, this is somebody who has had a history of trust within you. They've had a history of success. You know that they have your best interest at heart. Then, really listen to what they have to say.
Yeah, like trust is the biggest thing, right? Because if it's someone that you sort of trust, then you'll deceive yourself even more. Be like, oh, this is the side of them where they're just trying to trick me again. I don't actually truly trust who they are, right?
Yeah.
But if it's someone where you, like you said, have 100% full trust in, there's no way you can doubt yourself and say, hey, they're not looking out for my best interest. Because if you're doing that, you're going to realize, oh, wait, maybe I'm being delusional here and I am trying to form this picture that's completely wrong. Then you can catch yourself and then work with the person to kind of fix what you're thinking about.
Yeah, totally. This is why the lone wolf mentality is to the extent we see on social media. Take 6 months off, create your own business. Don't bring anyone else. Don't work with friends, right?
Everyone's trying to take you down.
Cut everything off, right? It's like you have to be one emotionally strong, like superhero of some sort to be able to do that without any sort of intrusive thoughts, distorted thoughts, cognitive biases taking over you, right? You have to be one amazingly strong person to do that, right? But this is the advice we give to everyone. Over the summer, go take a research job, right? Do this by yourself. Don't let anyone help you. Like, come on, right? Like, how much do you really know of that thing? How big is the aperture of your own knowledge where you can handle these things on your own?
Yeah.
If you need help, ask for help.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, I think we've talked about this in the past, right? Where it's like when you're going on these like crazy journeys and these things that you don't know, you need the support there. You need that extra opinion, especially if you're not the expert, someone to then guide you kind of down the path so you can actually learn and grow from whatever you're doing, like the research jobs, right? You need to have someone who's older than you, like a PhD student or whatever, watching over you because you don't know what you're doing. You're no master.
Yeah.
Like if you think I'm going to walk into this thing, know exactly what I'm doing, do it all myself, you're kind of being a fool.
Yeah.
Like you don't actually know what you're doing, being ignorant.
Yeah.
And then like you're not going to grow from it. And whoever you're doing the research for isn't going to get anything from it because you think you know what you're doing.
There you go.
And like in the end, you're just punishing other people by your ignorance.
100%. And I think it's like, why do people follow those Instagram posts that talk about that? Well, it's because the outcome is, it says at the top in the title, right? In like Comic Sans, size 34 font, emotionally strong, mental strength, mental fortitude. These are very strong words, right? They evoke a lot of emotions in people, lots of positive emotions.
I think it's also a coping mechanism too.
Really?
Like, because it takes a certain sense of vulnerability to trust other people.
There you go.
You
Yeah.
need to have faith in humanity to trust other people.
Yeah.
And, if you're somebody who maybe had a bad experience or you were hurt by someone in the past, it's easier to be like, I'm going to block off the world.
Yeah.
No one's going to get access to my heart. No one's
Yeah.
going to get access to my being. I'm going to do this on my own. So it's almost like a coping mechanism to past pains or past hardships, right?
Right. Yeah. That's totally right. It's like, you want to be a strong person, like you want to show me how strong you are, go ask for help.
Yeah.
Go ask for help. Go be vulnerable for once.
Yeah.
Go up to your boss and tell them, you know what, boss, this pandemic is really hitting me. I can't handle all this work. I need you to help me out. Can we delegate a little bit more? This is too much for me. Go do that. And if you do that, I'll consider you a strong person.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. That's 100% true.
Yeah, it's somewhat ironic though that vulnerability is the sign of strength, but it really is, right?
Yeah.
Like when you don't need to have your ego in the way of things.
It really is. It really is.
Yeah, like when you don't need, like when you don't need to have your ego in the way of any decision making to know what's in your best interest, right? Just be like, okay, this isn't working for me. They know what they're doing. I'll go ask. People will help, and you'll grow.
That's a lot harder
than saying, no, I'm going to figure this out myself. I'm too good. This should be easy. And just kind of doing your thing, right?
Yeah.
I was having my own issues one time at night, it was like a Sunday night or whatever. Terrible time to trust your emotions. Never trust your emotions.
Late night stuff is.
There you go. Yeah. Never trust your emotions past sunset. Past like 8:30 p.m., never trust your emotions.
Yes.
And so this person from my lab hits me up, Jocelyn, right? And they asked me, well, we didn't see you in our lab today. What's up? Right? And I see the message in my notification, but I don't read it because I don't know what to say. Because I'm torn between these two ideas. Do I become vulnerable and tell her what the actual problem is, which was that I was feeling overly anxious, right? Or do I create this facade and not be vulnerable? Because this is a little embarrassing. This is a little tough to confront with, right?
Yeah.
And this is easy. This is the easy way out.
Yeah.
I was sick. I went out for a run. I was working out, right? Stuff like that.
Yeah.
Stuff like that.
Things that avoid the actual root cause.
There you go, right? And then I told her, I was like, I eventually struck up the courage after 30 minutes of deciding what to say. And I said, yeah, you know what? I was feeling extremely anxious. I just couldn't get myself to open my camera. I couldn't get myself to do any of the work. I didn't even do the pre-lab. I didn't even submit that in, right? And then right after I said that, right after I jumped into the pool of being vulnerable, you know what she said? She said, oh, I've been through the same thing before. Here are some tips. Here are some tricks. Let's try grounding. This is what you can do. And it's like, oh my God, this is amazing, right? Like, and it helped out so much only because I decided to be vulnerable. I decided to be an open book, right?
Yeah, absolutely. What's something that you're trying to change in yourself in the next year? Not change, maybe develop. Maybe develop is the
Next
right
year.
word.
Oh.
Yeah.
Emotional resolve, for sure. Emotional resolve.
So what does that mean?
So, well, let's talk about the first step of it. So last year, my goal was emotional resolve.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was emotional resolve, but I realized that I can't get there yet because there's a prerequisite for that. There's a prerequisite, and that is emotional awareness, right? You can't fix the problem unless you know what the problem is.
Yeah.
Right? And so I had to be able to put my anxiety and stress and all the other problems into my own radar so I can watch over them and plot them out on a map, black and white, right? And then I can solve them. And for the past year, it's really been that. It's been creating awareness for myself of, well, here are your flaws. Here are your mistakes. Here are your shortcomings, right? And this year, I think it's about learning how to solve them, right? Or at least manage and embrace them, right? So emotional resolve, that's definitely my goal for this year.
Awesome.
Yeah, I think part of like everything is just acknowledging what's going on, like you said, right? Because how are you supposed to fix something if you ignore it? How do you say, hey, this thing isn't happening, so then therefore you don't need to fix it?
Yeah, it's like a narcissistic wonderland. Like it really is, right?
Yeah.
It's the nicest thing ever to never think about your problems. But what happens when you don't think about your problem? You know, what happens when you just toss them in the closet and you never open that closet door?
Yeah.
It's like shaking a can of pop. It shakes so much, eventually it just explodes.
Yeah, it's like, when is that closet gonna, then
There
the door's
you
gonna
go.
break, and then it's just gonna all
100%.
flood out on you.
Dude, the needle is being pushed to the right so much it's starting to shake and the entire engine just breaks down. And when it breaks down, it doesn't only break down on you, it breaks down for other people, right? You might think that suppressing your problems is affecting you. It's also affecting your family, your friendship. It manifests itself in many different ways, in many different ways. And so you have to be able to open that closet door and have it express itself in a nicer way.
Yeah.
And that nicer way comes with coping mechanisms. That nicer way comes with awareness and then emotional resolve, right? That's how it comes about.
Yeah. There's an old saying that says, you know, if you see a ghost, walk towards it. Because if you stand from a distance, then it starts turning into a beast that will kill you. But if you walk towards it, then you start to realize that it didn't actually exist.
Wow. Yeah.
So, you know, it's the same idea of avoiding that wishful thinking. Absolutely.
It's a tough conversation. And I think this is one good thing that came out of the pandemic and lockdown and stuff. It's that a lot of people were forced to sit at home with themselves. Only person they can hang out with is themselves and talk to themselves, whether they liked it or not. When it's 12 a.m. at night and your phone is out of charge and you're charging it and you have no one else, you have nothing else to do but just look up at the ceiling. Well, who are you talking to? You're talking to yourself. And it's a damn tough conversation to have. It's a very tough conversation to have because you think it's like meditation.
Yeah.
When you meditate, when you do self-reflection, when you're writing things down in your journal, you jump into it thinking, well, I'm going to write down all the positives. I'm a sweet guy. I'm a caring guy. These are my talents and skills.
Yeah.
It's like, no, the first thing you'll come about, the first thing that you will realize when you start meditating and doing self-reflection is that you have flaws. You have mistakes, dude. You have things that need to be fixed, problems that need to be solved, relationships that need to be, renewed somehow. So you have to realize that, right? And you have no other choice but to realize that. The positives come afterwards, but only once you have resolved the negatives first.
Yeah.
Right?
Absolutely. I'm going to toss you a bit of a situation.
Let's go.
Okay? You are climbing a mountain.
Oh, back to the mountain.
You've done a couple hikes in your life, and you know that when you're climbing on a hike, there are some things that help you in your hike, right? If you have good shoes on, it's better than having bad shoes on. If you bring a couple snacks, it makes it more enjoyable. You're not starving the entire way. Bring some water with you. Bring a couple hiking sticks. Makes your life easier. So now imagine that this hike is your life.
Yeah.
And that the peak of the hike, the summit that you're trying to reach, that is the coming together of all your life's works and passions, the peak of your existence, let's call it. You've done everything that you wanted to do. What couple of things would you suggest to people to bring with them on this hike?
Bro. A denim shirt, a cup of coffee, and a big
An espresso machine.
An espresso machine and a good alibi. You need that too.
And a good alibi.
And a good alibi. You heard? Yeah. Oh man, that's a great question. That's such a good question. I guess the first one, and we're kind of circling back to what we talked about, but it's to listen. It's to seriously listen. When you're on that hike, try to listen. You'll hear for things. The world is so beautiful. You cannot just hang out in your own little world. This is nothing compared to what's out there. So listen. The second one has to be, it's to realize that path has already been paved. When you go on a hike, right, unless it's like us, like that one time where we didn't hike on a paper hike, and like I cut my finger, the path is already paved. It doesn't matter if you're by yourself at 3 a.m. at midnight hiking this mountain in the dark. That path is paved. Someone has been up and they've come down, right? And they were all right. So you're not alone, right? No need to be anxious or nervous or stressed. You'll be fine. People have done this before. And if that path hasn't been paved yet, that mountain over there, that path is paved. What's the difference between this mountain and that mountain? It's the same mountain. You're still hiking, right? So even if you are carving your own path, people have done it before. They have advice to give. They're going to tell you how to hike that mountain. What's the best shoes? What's the best gear? What's the best backpack, right? So it goes back to being vulnerable as well. Be vulnerable enough to ask people, how do I hike this mountain? And realize that you're not the only one who's doing it, right? It's funny. It's like just the Rocky Mountains, and there's like let's say there's 1 million mountains out there, and it's one mountain for one person, and everyone's hiking, and they think they're by themselves, and that's the only mountain over there, right? It's the only mountain around. You reach the top and you realize there's like 1 million mountains out there, and that he's at the bottom. He hasn't started yet. That person he's almost where I am, right? There's another person who's even higher than me.
Yeah.
Right? You're not by yourself. You're not as alone as you think you are. And the third thing, I'll go back to the cup of coffee.
Always need a good cup of coffee.
You need a cup of coffee. Yeah.
You need a cup of coffee. Awesome. Thank you so much for coming on to the podcast today, having this amazing discussion. I think there are a lot of really good points that you brought up that our audience can take away today, with vulnerability, with listening, being true to who you are and yourself. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you.
No, thank you. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, this was awesome. Thank you.
Thank you guys so much for tuning into episode 41 of Blurred Summits. If you want to catch the full video podcast, you can catch us on YouTube. The full audio podcast is out on all platforms, and be sure to follow us on TikTok and Instagram for daily content where we would love to get to know you guys more. Thank you.